Hello and welcome to our second Flosstube video for Traditional Stitches 20th Anniversary Sampler and Morison. Some background on the sampler is it was designed by Nicola Parkman of Hands Across the Sea Samplers for us as an exclusive design to celebrate our 20th anniversary. So we're very excited to see everyone's progress, and we're just going to answer some questions that have come up since our last video. First of all, I'd like to introduce our Stitch Along leader, Rose Heck. Happy New Year, Rose.
Happy New Year, Janice.
So we've been watching some really interesting progress on the Facebook group.
I agree.
Yeah, some people have started in different spots. Some people have even finished. Some people are speeding ahead. And the one thing that is giving me particular joy is hearing how much people are just loving stitching on this sampler, the happiness that it's bringing them.
Yeah, it's interesting because there are some people that are feeling guilty about moving ahead. And I say, go for it. If you want to move ahead and move to the beat of your own drummer, then do so. And you're right about a couple of finishes. They're nice to see. I have no problem with that, but I have a little bit of finishing envy. But I'm behaving.
Good. So am I.
Yeah.
As hard as it is, though.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, let's get into some questions that have come up since our last video. The first one was about stitching a sampler like Anne on Aida cloth.
Correct.
Yeah, and so Anne's sampler is actually an excellent project for stitching on Aida. There will be a few specialty stitches in the bottom half of the sampler, but they are Aida friendly. And in a future video, we're going to be doing some demonstrations as well as give some suggestions for alternate stitches that could be used on Aida. Sometimes I find that stitchers are reluctant to take on a new project and use Aida for it, but there are a couple things that I wanted to talk to you about with the Aida. It's really a stitcher preference. And Nicola's done a great job on some of the recent samplers about adapting them for Aida and giving some suggestions for Aida. But we really want people to be able to stitch within their comfort zone. If Aida is where it's at for you, then that is just fine. Let's find a way to make it work.
Right, right.
And everybody has to decide if this is the time that they want to stretch themselves. If they've been an Aida stitcher, and Anna's a great opportunity to step out and try something new. But the other thing is that sometimes you just want to sit down and stitch something that you enjoy, that isn't a challenge, and this is a great candidate.
Correct. I find Anne is a real comfort stitching because it isn't daunting. There's not much for specialty stitches. It's mostly cross stitch. If you're an Aida stitcher and that is where you want to be, great. And we can show you in future videos how to get around some of those specialty stitches. If at this moment you want to venture into an even weave or linen, there's a lot of us out there that will help you get through that process and teach you.
So watch for more information on Aida in upcoming videos. The other thing that I wanted to say is that during the unprecedented times we've been experiencing in the last year, we have had a lot of people who have come back to stitching. People who haven't stitched in 20 years, stopped to have a career, raise their kids, that kind of thing. And they are coming back to stitching and they are floored by the difference in the range of products and what people are doing with their stitching from when they used to do it. And so these people are looking for a familiar way to step back into the cross-stitching hobby. And I think that's a great way. Ada's a great way to do that.
Exactly. I remember back in the 80s, that is all that there was Ada. And my first thing that I had ever done on even weave was challenging, but I kept at it, and using the right products helped. And I achieved it, and I haven't looked back. But you do you. If you're an Ada stitcher, great. If you want to go on and do something like linen or even weave, great. So there's no right or wrong.
No, and we're all stitching for a reason right now. It's the
Right.
comfort and the community and those kinds of things that we're getting from it during these times. So anything, whatever it takes to keep people stitching.
And I think you hit the nail on the head, the word comfort and comfort stitching. And I think we need that. And it has to be like a cocoon, a warm, cozy blanket that you can wrap around you.
Mhm.
So don't let anybody else shame you into believing that you need to do something that you're not comfortable doing. So I guess you have our permission to stitch on what you like to stitch on. So.
Excellent. Well said, Rose. That brings us to the next question that we've had a lot of, which is thread coverage on a sampler like Anne's.
Yeah. Yes.
So thread coverage is a function of the fabric that you want to work a design on, and it is strongly a part of personal preference.
Right.
As a shop owner, I can provide guidance to you on starting points for matching up threads and fabric, but really it comes down to the stitcher's choice. There are, so some people have been commenting that the coverage of the 100/3 silk is a little bit sparse on the 37 count linen. And it's a great opportunity to try the 100/3 silk without, if 45 count linen is just too far of a stretch, then at least you're getting a good match of supplies and getting to try something new. There are a number of designers, very popular current designers, that really prefer sparser thread coverage. And so they'll do one strand on 28 count for a cross stitch, or one strand on 32 count, where you can really see the linen coming through on the thread. And it totally suits their designs. When I stitch their designs, I add a second strand. I prefer a little bit more coverage, so I give myself permission to adapt that a little bit. But yeah, what do you think about that?
It does come down to a personal preference. I agree. Stitching on a lower count with one strand does give you that antique primitive look, which is really suitable for something that is more of a prim antique look. And something that I had heard, and you hear it over and over again, is do you look at something this close up?
Right.
Or do you see it on passing? And I have seen pictures of that one designer, of her designs done on low count with one strand, and they're phenomenal. They're beautiful, but not everybody likes that look close up. So you have to do what suits you. So if you like the lower count in one strand, go for it. Nobody is going to shame you in telling you that that's wrong. Okay. So the only time I would probably hesitate is having a really high count and a really heavy thread. Now, some people really like that thick look. And I guess it is personal preference again, but it has to be comfortable to stitch. And if it's really tough to pull through your linen and it starts fraying your thread, that might be the time to change something up. That's the only time I would ever steer away from that. But
well, and the other thing is that you never really know until you try, right? You have to do some experimenting, and you have to find things that you don't like in order to know what it is that you do like sometimes.
And it comes back to what I had said before, is as stitchers, we have to give ourselves permission and forgiveness to, if we're stitching something and we think that, oh, somebody else might not like it, you have to give yourself permission to say, but I like it, okay? You're not stitching for anybody else but yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think as stitchers, we need to remember that.
Well, and that is the perfect transition into the next thing that I just want to touch on here, because it could actually be a subject for a whole number of Flosstube videos. And that is how to handle changing things up when you're working a reproduction sampler. Of, you know, how authentic do you need to be, and what is reasonable changes to make? And really the truth is that we just use an antique sampler and then the chart that is the reproduction sampler as our stepping off point. And then really do the changes, the alterations that suit you. It's just a stepping off point, really, but that's a whole other conversation.
That's a teaser. That's a teaser to another whole subject. You know, like I'd like to get my hands on that and discuss that a little more, but no, we will leave that for future.
All right. So another question that came up a couple of times is, how in the course of your first Flosstube video did Rose manage to get so many stitches done while you guys were still talking? So Rose is a super stitcher, and really I suggest that you follow her on Instagram, and I'll put that information below to see just how much she accomplishes. I'm sure she's got little elves that work in her basement that help her in the night when she's actually
definitely.
So anyways, she's very inspirational, and she's a very experienced stitcher. But Rose, you're going to show us a little bit of your two-handed technique for stitching that helps you move along.
Sure. I'm just going to turn on the light. Hopefully it doesn't glare. Janice brought this up to me a couple of days ago, that people were saying how fast I stitched in that. And I had to giggle because I've heard that before about other floss tubers, that they were so fast. And I thought, and actually I have to confess, Janice is a fast stitcher. I know that. I have watched her. I have seen her at a retreat, and yeah, she's quite phenomenal, guys. So yeah, hats off to her for saying that about me. I never thought of myself as a fast stitcher. My husband was watching me the other night, and he says, yeah, you are a fast stitcher. So from somebody that really has no experience other than watching me, that was quite something. So I digress. The one thing about stitching is having the right tools. So I work with stands mostly. I don't work in hand too much, especially not on high count. And we've discussed this in the last video that we had about stands, about lighting, about side tensioners. So we're not going to cover that, but I do tend to like those tools because it makes me more of an efficient stitcher. And I think that is the crux of the whole thing, is how can you become a more efficient stitcher? Now, if that's not important to you, ignore all of this and just do you. Okay, but if you want to learn a little bit, and I'm not sure if I have a lot of wisdom to impart, I think the biggest thing is experience. I've been stitching for 45 plus years. You just, when you train, you get better. Okay, and I won't speak any more about that because that might be a whole rabbit hole I don't want to go into. So I have needles loaded up here, and I don't think, let me just turn this a little bit. So just bear with me here. Shut off the light there for a second. So I have a needle loaded up here for the right-hand border. I have a needle loaded up for the left-hand border. I have a needle loaded up for this blue stepping, the undulating border underneath the strawberry border. And my last one is the line for the thread for the vine border, and it's a kind of a clover border. And the reason I've done that is all to do with landmarking, which we will talk about in a bit. So I'm going to turn this back. When I'm stitching, my dominant hand is underneath. Okay, so I apologize if my light is a little bit bright. I can actually turn it down a bit. Is that okay? Is that?
Yep.
And I know you probably won't see the stitching, but I'll talk you through it. So I'm going to grab my blue floss, and I'm doing the start of the border, the dividing band. So my dominant hand, and I'm left-handed, guys. Sorry, for all you right-handed people, this might be annoying, but it'd be the opposite. My left hand is underneath. I didn't plan that. It's just an automatic thing. My right hand is on the top, and I start with my needle on top. So it's easy enough to find your next hole, and I put it through in the down, and I grab it with my dominant hand, and I pull it back. Now this is the area that people probably have trouble with, is finding the hole coming back through. There again, I have to speak, it just comes from experience, but there's a little bit of the needle I will drag on the back side of the linen to find the hole. And I know this sounds weird, and I've heard this before. People like the sound of the needle going through the linen. And I also like the sound of the drag of the needle to find the next hole. Okay, so I'll just drag it for a couple. Sometimes I find it, sometimes I don't. But in this case, I do. Okay, and I bring it back in and I continue. Okay, you might want to use your non-dominant hand on top just to kind of narrow your view, and then you go back in. I tend to get into the zone quite easy. I've done a couple stitches. I'll leave it at that. I won't do the 10 stitches that I did in the first video. There's no real rocket science to it. I think, like you, Janice, it just comes with experience and enjoying something so much you're willing to devote that time. And with time, you get better, you get faster. I have days that I can't seem to thread a needle or find that linen hole for the life of me. And, you know, whether it's because I didn't sleep well, I drank too much coffee, or I'm just not feeling it. So I don't know if that answers questions, but.
There definitely are days when you're not in the groove, hey?
Yeah.
I am right-handed. So when I do the same setup that you were doing with the double-handed, my right hand is on the bottom because I trust it. It knows what it's doing. And I keep my left hand on the top where I can keep an eye on it because it's not nearly as talented as my right hand is.
Right. Right.
So, yeah,
there's a well-known floss tuber. I won't name her names because this is, you know, she's a wonderful lady, but she was trying to switch things up so that her dominant hand was on top. I think she was dealing with an injury of her hand, but also she was trying to retrain. So I tried it for a little bit and it was awkward, but it kind of gave me a heads up of how maybe somebody that is starting, the awkwardness it feels. And I know with time, it just comes. It comes and comes and comes. And don't expect it to come, you know, for those viewers that are watching going, yeah, but it just doesn't feel right. Don't expect it to come in 1 month, 6 months, or even a year. It's just one of those things that just takes time. It just, you know, one day all of a sudden you'll go, oh, this feels good. I never even noticed it's coming along, but I don't know what more to say to that other than just give it time.
and give it a try and give it time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Perfect. All right, so now we're talking about moving into the second section of our sampler. And so I'm challenging myself with these Flosstube videos to learn something new about publishing a video with every one that we do. So the thing I'm going to learn this time is to try to insert some still photos here. So I'm going to try to insert 3. One is going to be Rose's sampler, the first month section. One is going to be my sampler, the first month section. And just so you know, they'll look pretty similar because we're using the same thread and linen combination. And you'll see that we did go down the side borders a little bit, but we have both been really good girls and resisted the urge to go any further.
Right.
The third photo that I'm going to upload is going to be of the monthly breakdown that Rose has done for the 12 months of the Stitch Along for Anne sampler. And so then you'll be able to reference all of those. And that is also on our Facebook. Page as well. You can see that there. So the band that we're going to do for the second section is this clovery band here. And it is all cross stitch, so it's what we're used to. But Rose, you wanted to talk a little bit about using landmarks.
Correct. Landmarking, I think, is the crux of all of this properly. You make mistakes. Now, do I make mistakes? Oh, you bet. And in fact, I have a piece in the other room that I have to take a bunch out because, and cross stitching you cannot assume. But landmarking, this is why, if I can turn this again, let's see if we can see it. I don't know if it's too bright. Can you see
it?
That? Is it too bright?
It's okay. We can work with it.
Let me see if that helps.
Okay, that's good.
Let me bring. Okay, so in landmarking, and I'm just going to kind of sneak in here, I've actually started a little bit of the blue border. Okay, and I've tied it in with, I've landmarked with this one leaf here and with this border. So I double check that, yes, I've hit the end of the leaf there with that uptick of the cross stitch there. So I'm good there. But I want to start that vine border for the clover. And I landmarked using this blue border. But once I've attached, you can see I've attached it. I haven't put that stitch in yet. I will put in the one stitch and then I'm going to double check and I'm going to landmark. I'm going to use the needle here. I'm going to landmark an attachment again with this leaf right here. And I'm going to check with my side border. Now, you're probably saying, but yes and no. I know that this part is correct. Okay, so I don't have to landmark in here, but I'm going to count down across. Now, I may not do that all the time. As long as I am landmarked right here. I'm going to go back and down, and here I'm just looking at the pivot, and that I've come far enough down that I've landmarked onto this border. I don't know if that makes perfect sense or not, but the bottom line when landmarking is you always need to check 2 points of reference. Okay, I guess long story long, and maybe I'm long-winded, but please make sure to all of our viewers, double check, check twice, stitch once. I think that's a carpenter rule, but I think it should be a cross-stitcher rule too. And sometimes if you need to check 3 times, always landmark for the things that are around. 9 times out of 10, you won't make a mistake. Well,
And it's not that unpicking is the end of the world either, but you were telling me before we started that one of the ladies that you're mentoring through our Facebook group had gotten almost all the way across the green of the strawberry border and had it to unpick. And true confessions, I did too.
Yeah.
And that was because what I should have been doing was matching up the strawberry band, the high points, with the zigzag of the band above, just to make sure that as I was going along, I was in the right place. The angled part of my strawberry band, I was doing one stitch too short. And so by the end, I've got myself into trouble and I had to unpick it, which, like I said, is not the end of the world.
It isn't. There are some things that you can fudge. Being a band sampler, it's a little bit hard to fudge. And if you're anything like me, it will bug me. So it's got to come out. I don't know, nothing more I can say about that. For those that have had to frog and are watching this and going, yeah, but, well, you know, we all make mistakes. If you can't figure out how to fudge it, you're right. Yeah, you might have spent a couple hours putting something in, take an hour or half an hour, take it out. And this is something I should just mention. I don't usually put anything away that I have to frog. I will frog it out and then I'll put it away. And the next day I'll bring it out and I'll go, oh, I don't remember my mistake. I have a fresh palette there. Lucy, sorry. I have a fresh palette to start again.
Yes.
And so I force myself to forget. So frog, put away, forget, start fresh.
Right.
So.
And then you don't have a bad feeling about where you're at with that project when you pick it up again the next time.
Exactly. I agree.
So a couple more things we wanted to hit on. There has been some discussion on the Facebook group about dry hands.
Yeah.
And working with silk. And people have said that the winter is bad, but I find all year round is bad because in the summer I'm in the garden and then in the winter it's so dry here that my hands are always in rough shape. So you were going to show us something that you've got.
Yes.
That is a product that we offer in the shop that is good for dry hands this time of year.
Yes. So there has been discussion about this product, Utterly Smooth, and you sell it. I know that you have it in that, but it works. And I have it on my hands. My hands are not greasy, but what I find working with either silks or cottons, and silks are worse, but cottons are just about as bad. And I think it has something to do with the dryness, the electrostatic, and it makes the microscopic fibers of your floss stick out. I get more knots. I get caught more on my cuticles if they're dry, and it makes me grumpy. And it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to have dry hands. And I don't know if everybody knows, I also massage, not the last couple of weeks, but so my hands are constantly, I'm washing hands also. So winters I get dry, cracked hands and sometimes bleeding. So this is one of the best products I have ever come across. And I've tried a lot of different things, trust me. But this one, in fact, I'm just about out. So I would say invest in Utterly Smooth. You will not go wrong. Millions of farmers. That's where this product, I think, originally came from. So.
All right, and we'll link to that in our web store in the section below the video.
Good idea.
Another thing that has cropped up a couple of times is that not everybody is using Facebook as their social media platform these days. And so a few people have said, well, can you run this stitch along also on Instagram? And so we do put the links in. when we post a video or when we have news, that kind of thing on Instagram, and your hashtag is Ann Morison SAL. And I'll put that down below as well, but always remember that Ann Morison only has one R in Morison. When you're doing your searches, that'll help you out.
I was just on there this morning. Sorry, I'll interject. And there's not a lot of posts on there. So I think it's a hidden gem. And I would encourage everybody to start posting on there. Let's fill that up. Let's get over 1,000 posts, and let's make it well known on Instagram.
Absolutely. So that brings me to our next subject, which is the Ann Morison Sampler is a limited edition. And the last print run is sitting in the shop, and there are, well, it's been a busy day for orders today. So I would say that we're down to maybe our last 25 charts for Ann's Sampler, and then that is going to be it. So we'll link that below as well. But if you were thinking about joining us, and even if you just want to stash the chart for another day, now is the time to do it.
Yes, and everybody that hears this, tell your friends, if you know somebody that is on the fence about whether to get it or not, tell them that they better get it now, because time is running out and so are the charts.
And she's going to be a collector's item, I think.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. Well, Rose, we're going to aim to do our next Flosstube video in the beginning of February, so that we're going to keep kind of the our start date for the next section about the 5th of each month. And so much other stuff happens on the 1st that I think that the 5th is a good choice. So we're going to keep going along with that plan and just see what else comes up. And we invite you to like our video and post your comments, and we will go through them and answer them as best we can below. But also, it's obviously really great subject matter for our next video. So please feel free to do that. And then we're going to wait and see what 2021 is going to bring for us. And we're hoping everybody stays safe and that you are finding your comfort and some inspiration with your needlework during these times.
Thank you. And I agree with you, Janice. Everyone, continue stitching. Be safe out there. It's still, you have to be cautious, but fortunately, as stitchers, we definitely have a good reason to stay at home. And in fact, I rather enjoy that. So continue Zooming with your friends and family and stitch your heart out.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.